So here we are at the Colts complex. We got a chance to hear from Chris Ballard, talk about this year's draft. Like always, he took 20 minutes to tell us just about nothing. But he did go into some depth at the end about some position groups and where he feels like depth is. And he did tell how many players he gives a first-round grade. And that number was 17. That was kind of interesting. But have a listen, see what you can glean from it.
Fire away, Chad.
Chris, all the work you've done so far, and still more to do. As you sit here, do you have a pretty good idea how 1, 2, 3 go, or not?
No idea.
Really?
No, and I don't think anybody does. Now, everybody thinks they do. I mean, of course, everybody thinks they do, and everybody has an inside source that's giving them information of what's going to be done. But I think, as you all know, just look at the mock drafts and tell me how accurate they are after the draft. Nobody knows. Nobody's giving out information. Go ahead, Greg.
Does it cause some stress knowing, because you're drafting so high and so important, and it does seem like everything might be on the table for you in those 15 minutes when you're on the clock?
Yeah. No, I mean, look, we do our best like y'all do to dig and try to find out who, but I think we're all guessing. I really do. Now, team need and all of that plays into it, and you don't know, like everybody's draft board's a little different. And who we have ranked high, they might not have ranked high. So you don't know that. We're not in those draft rooms. So no, we line them up, and how they fall is how we take them.
What's the more, you guys are talking quarterbacks in the draft right now. What is the more heated debate? The football flaws you see on the tape, or the mental makeup, because it's such a unique position?
Well, I think it's all important, and I think it comes down to who fits you and what you can work with, and I think that's critical. I mean, and what your coaching staff can work with, and what they think they can do with them, how they can build an offense around that player to make him work, no matter who it is, doesn't matter who the quarterback is. I mean, you're going to build an offense different for Peyton Manning that you're going to build for Michael Vick. I mean, it's just going to be different. So I think it comes down to who you believe you can build the offense around the best and win games with.
When you have a coach like Shane who's open to working with any style, how do you zero in on what fits you the best if he's kind of open to whatever? Yeah,
and that's a good thing. I mean, that opens that broadens the field for you. And that's a good thing. And I think as we've gone through the process of all the evaluations and coming down to what we think will be best for the Indianapolis Colts, whoever we end up taking is going to be that guy, and he'll make it work.
Chris, how much would you say your opinion has maybe changed on the class since having Shane here for the last 2 months, just listening to him, watching him?
I don't think it's changed my opinion of what I think of the players, maybe on how we would use them, but it hadn't changed my opinion on the player.
Chris, you mentioned that there's so much uncertainty in terms of what's going to happen in front of you. Is it more than other years? Is there greater uncertainty this year because of the scenarios, or not?
I don't know. I think back to when we took Quentin at 6, and all of a sudden you had, if you remember, there was a corner that went off the board, 2 quarterbacks went off the board, Barkley went off the board, and it wasn't, there was some uncertainty then too. So I think every year, wherever you're drafting, there's no exact science to know exactly who's going to be there and who's going to be gone. You do your best to figure out get your board lined up the way you see it. It's best for your team, and then you move forward.
But you guys scenario that all, right?
Yep.
You prep. So I'm curious into that. Like, have you decided what you're willing to give up if you want to move up to 3? Let's just say.
Well, that's saying we want to move up.
I knew this was coming. Who says we won't move back?
At least you won't be sitting. The good news is at least you won't be sitting around all day to the second round.
We think.
Are we sure?
Yeah. I think you know us well enough. We'll do what we think is best in the moment. Whether we think we need to move up or back.
Do you have an idea
depending
of what you're willing to part with?
Oh yeah, you always
And how
have
far
a,
you're willing to go. And
yeah,
how far you're
absolutely.
not.
You always have an idea of where, both ways. How far you're willing to go up, how far you're willing to go back. You always have an idea, and then the board dictates that too a little bit. Like, all right, so this is a great. I'll never forget when we took Braden and Darius, and we took a lot of criticism for taking both of them, but we had them ranked high, and then I just remember, I remember walking up to the board and telling everybody, like, who's left? It's like, look at, I mean, there was nobody left at those positions. I said, this is it. If we don't take these two guys, but there's a scarcity now going forward at the position. So, and they were ranked, as we had them as highly ranked players. So a little of that plays into it too.
Chris, league wide, how much lying do you think goes on right now?
Oh, everybody's lying. I might be the most honest, unfortunately. But everybody's lying.
Do you guys lie?
I think you know Melly well enough. Like, usually if you answer a question, I'll either dance around it or give you an answer. Today I'm a dancer.
I appreciate it, Don.
Today I'm a dancer.
Has there ever been a situation where you've changed your thinking based on something that was said in one of these settings?
In terms of a media session?
Yeah, like outside with no organization.
No.
A lot of stuff comes out, revelations, true or not, about players late in the process. I always thought, if any of that's true, you guys probably knew it a long time ago. Does that tend to be true?
Yes. Yeah.
So
And there's a lot of, and I don't know what people get out of that. Like, I don't, there's usually an agenda behind it,
Sure.
but I don't know what people get out of leaking that kind of information. I don't agree with it. That's just me personally.
We always talk about like teams won't trade within their own division. Is that a hard and fast rule around the NFL, or is it?
No, I don't think so. I think if it's the right trade, you do it. If it's the right one for your team, and you do it. I don't have a problem with it.
Chris, the quarterbacks have been lined up, we think, sort of, basically the top two, young and Stroud. And here in the last week or so, all of a sudden, it's changing a lot. I don't expect you to know what Houston's thinking too, but is this an example of just there's so much time going on that people just get bored and start saying different things? Is that normal?
Well, what I always find interesting is like who's lining them up. You know what I mean? I mean, who's lining them up? And you're not. I don't know if. I think if you polled 32 teams, you might get 32 different answers of how they would have them lined up. So, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you who we have lined up: 1, 2, 3, and 4, and even 5 and 6. I think there's some other players in this draft that are pretty good too. But who's lining them up? I mean, they don't have any skin in the game. And they don't. It's a little different. They have no skin. It's easy to line them up and be wrong. And then when you're right 1 out of 10 times, you scream at the top of your lungs that I told you so. But no, who's lining them up?
You guys have had the chance to sit down and talk with some of these prospects, the top 30 visits, talk to someone on the phone. Does your evaluation change significantly, or is it just crossing T's and dotting I's, or is it really solidified?
It just confirms, and I enjoy it. Like, I enjoy visiting with these players. I mean, like, a lot of them won't end up here. And even when you at the combine, you enjoy getting to know these young men and their stories and what they've been through and how they've gotten to where they are today, and understanding more about who they are and what makes them tick. And I've always said, I mean, like, their resume is their resume. Like, the tape and what they've done. All this does is confirm kind of what we think we know. But you might dig a little deeper and say, okay, I didn't realize that. That's an interesting point. And we forget these are young men that are still developing, both as players and as human beings. Men, they're not. We expect them to be men right away, but they're not. They still got to develop. That's a really cool thing about what we get to do, to watch their careers, follow their careers. Guys that go on other teams. That's a really cool thing to watch.
Chris,
you talked about like Marion, your philosophy with the Shane cycle, and it kind of being open at the quarterback position. But how much did that bleed into other offensive positions, maybe wide receiver, offensive line, maybe having you personally look and say, okay, I've done this in the past. Could it change? Could it stay the same?
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I think like players are players, and fitting in. Like I'm, working under Coach Reed in Kansas City to Frank to Shane. I mean, offensive coaches. Philosophically, what they want, there might be some little nuances, but they're pretty similar. Most offensive coaches are pretty similar. What they.
Chris, it's such a big decision for you, the organization. You're folks say all the time, gotta get this right. What has the process been like for you right now as you head into the next week?
It's been fun. I mean, I enjoy, like you enjoy this part. I mean, I really enjoy this part of it. I think y'all know me well enough, and I enjoy the digging. It's been fun to be around especially our offensive staff, they're all new, to get to know them. Jim Bob's really talented. It's been fun to be around him, spend time with him, how his mind works, what he sees, how he thinks. Same thing with Shane. It's been an interesting process, and I enjoy that. Like I don't know. I mean, I think y'all feel the pressure more than I do sometimes. I don't. When you do the work, the pressure's not as great as what people make it out to be. Doesn't mean you're always going to be right, but when you put the work in, there's not a lot of angst within you. I don't know if that makes sense to y'all, but that's just. I mean, I think we were all in college at some point. There's at some point when we went to take a college test and we didn't do squat. I mean, like we didn't prep for it. We didn't do anything. Well, damn right, there's beads of sweat and you're freaking trying to BS your way through the freaking test and hope you can get a C. Well, but when you study for the test, you walk in and you do it. You do really well.
When you're weighing whether to possibly move up, how much are you looking at the teams behind you? How much of a sense do you have for what that market's like? Who might lead from?
Well, of course you're gauging who might need that position, all right? And weighing who's on the board at the time. I mean, there's always this assumption that we've targeted one player. This is the main assumption right now, that we have targeted one guy to go get. I don't know if that's an accurate assumption. Matter of fact, I say it's not. And so I think you got to wait till draft. You can't, like before the fact, you got to wait till draft day and see how things unfold, and then be able to react accordingly.
So how many players do you have with first round grades? Can you share?
17.
Is that normal, or is it? I mean,
every year's a little different. Every year's a little different, and that's not saying that the 18th player is not going to be good, or second round player is not going to be good. We see that. I mean, we've all studied the draft enough to know, and we've seen through the years. But I think every year's a little bit different. Some years there might be 24. Some years there might be 15, and it just depends. I don't know if it's any better or worse than it ever is.
You talked a lot for years about not forcing, not going to pick a guy I don't believe in, and how you don't believe in thinking about what happens if it doesn't work out.
Mm-hmm.
How does that not enter your mind a little bit with this team, with this quarterback carousel, and the stakes of this pick? You have not picked this high since Quentin. There's a lot riding on this pick, whether you're going to admit it or not.
Well, I think there's a lot riding on every first round pick.
Sure.
I mean, I think any pick in the draft, like every time you're taking a player, there's a lot riding on it, and I think if you create that own anxiety within yourself, then that's when you start to doubt. And that's just not in me. It's just not.
Chris, you go back to March, you talk about some of your other moves this offseason. What went into trading Stephon?
I think it was good for both of us. He just had a point in his career he's at the end of his career. I thought he was a decent fit for the defense, but a chance to get a pick for him, you know, in the last year of his deal, shed a little bit of the contract money off, I thought was good for both of us. To be able to send him to Dallas, which was a good spot and a good fit defensively for him, that kind of went into it.
With Stephon and Brandon elsewhere, does that make quarterback a need for you to add either in the draft or going forward?
Oh, I think it's always a position that, you know, you want to have as many cover guys as you can. But yeah, I mean, that's a position we got an eye on both, and we think there's still some free agents out there too that could help us if we need be.
Chris, I know the city is doing a push for the NFL draft. How big would that be for this city if that could happen?
I still don't understand why the city hadn't gotten another Super Bowl. I'm not gonna lie to you. I mean, has anybody hosted it better than Indy? I mean, really, it was awesome. I mean, we got an unbelievable downtown, great setup, great convention center, great support from you know, everybody within the city. I mean, I think having the draft here would be tremendous. I think it's set up perfect downtown. But I keep asking the question about the Super Bowl too. So what do I know? I think it's a great place for big events.
Chris,
okay, we can take a couple more.
What does Gardner Minshew's presence do for you in terms of flexibility of what kind of quarterback you're willing to? In other words, is Gardner Minshew perhaps going to start this year for 17 games, or what?
He's here to compete. Okay, he's here to compete.
Yeah.
Here to compete with Sam right now, and Nick, who's still on the roster. Those three. But what he does, he has experience, understanding of the offense, understanding of Shane. He's played good football when asked to play good winning football. He's done it. We actually liked him in the draft. You know, Jacksonville ended up taking him. We ended up taking E.J. Speed, and then he ended up going, you know, right behind us in that year's draft. But highly intelligent, highly competitive, very accurate with the football.
You're dancing, by the way. You're not lying, but you're dancing.
No, but I'm not lying.
You said earlier that you know there's a misconception that you targeted one player. I want to just clarify that a little bit. Are you saying because you don't know what the scenarios are going to be, so you got to prepare for all of them, and then you have reward, which does kind of you are kind of targeting that way, right?
No, and it does, and we'll line them up that way. But I always love to read the reports that the Colts love this guy, and they love this guy, and they're dialed in on this guy. Like, who'd that come from? It didn't come from me. I mean, who's it coming from? Like, who's telling them who we love and who we don't love? Like, they don't know.
Chris, last one here.
O-line wise, you guys have done a ton in the last month. Feel good about the personnel?
Like to add, yeah, we'd like to add some depth for sure.
Free agency?
Both. We still think there's some players at free agency and in the draft. It's a good O-line draft. Like I'll tell you, like I think there's like tight ends about as good as I've seen. Like it is an excellent tight end draft. Secondary, cornerback in particular, really good depth. O-line, I thought was really good. Defensive line, defensive end especially, I thought really good depth in the draft. And players that are going to go in spots that, you know, 4th, 5th round that are going to play and be really productive, good players.
All right.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Dancing.
That's Chris Ballard. And the bottom line is we're going to have to wait the next 6 days, and he's going to have to wait the next 6 days. When the draft happens, and we're going to see who the Colts take. And we're not going to know before, no matter who we talk to, because they don't know yet. That's the thing that we get from Chris Ballard, and we get it every year, and he's right. You know what? He doesn't lie. I've never known him to lie. You go through the transcripts of all the press availabilities, the media availabilities that Ballard's had. I can't find a lie. Yes, you can find dancing, but you don't find lies.